It's the 2nd of May 2023 and we're in New York in the US. TV and film writers represented by the Writers Guild of America are protesting to obtain contracts granting them better working conditions. But salary and stability are not the only issues screenwriters are marching for.
We're seeking protections like the protection against AI, robots writing our scripts and eliminating our jobs as writers, fair pay, some fundamental rights as writers.
And the negotiations came to like a really hard stop. Like the other guild just didn't really like budge on anything. Specifically on the issue of AI is what I'm mostly concerned about. It doesn't really belong in a human process. So that's why I'm out here today.
The rise of artificial intelligence and the unregulated space in which it operates is one of the main concerns that screenwriters have. Is AI going to replace the minds behind our most entertaining TV shows? Can AI come up with a better plot than a human writer? The strikes ended in September 2023, with the ratification of a deal in October of the same year. The agreement included some limits regarding the use of AI, but it was just a small part of a much larger, complex discussion, one that even we, working behind this podcast, are part of. What role, if any, should AI have in art and other creative fields? We know this is a big question, and not only because art is such a broad term, but also because AI is in constant development. It's easy to fall into polarization and immediately condemn the use of AI in art. But haven't you at least been tempted to transform one of your photos into a Studio Ghibli-style illustration? Haven't you ever asked ChatGPT to create a poster for your Friday party? Welcome to Euronews Tech Talks, the podcast that explores the digital, technological, and scientific landscape shaping Europe. I'm your host, James Thomas. This is the second of 3 special episodes on AI. After discussing the environmental impact of AI and how we can curb it, we now turn our attention to another significant debate, investigating the relationship between AI and art. What risk do art and artists face with the growth of AI? Are there any benefits related to the use of automated systems in artistic creation? To answer these and other questions, I'll engage in a conversation with 3 experts who have slightly different opinions about the subject, but who are ready to contribute to the discussion. So, make yourself comfortable and let's begin. Hello and welcome to Euronews Tech Talks. Today I'm joined by 3 guests, and I believe this is the first time that our podcast has featured a conversation with 3 people, but we thought that this topic required multiple perspectives, so here we are. So let's give a warm welcome to comic book artist and art director Francesco Archidiacono, artist Sofia Crespo, and lecturer and researcher in digital humanities at King's College London, Eleonora Lima. So, to start with, I'm going to turn my attention to you, or the artists, Sofia and Francesco. We don't often have artists on Euronews Tech Talks because it's more of a tech podcast. So perhaps you could tell us about your art in a few words. So what's it about? What do you work on? Sofia, let's start with you.
Well, my work is centered mainly around the natural world. So how humans view, like how we perceive the natural world, how we relate to it, and also how we do that through the current technologies that we have. So I use data, for example, to understand, to look at bias of like how we observe different species. Also look back at archives of natural history illustrations or how the oceans were depicted throughout time.
And Francesco, what about you? What art do you create? What's it about? What do you work on?
As a comic book artist, I guess I'm more into the more commercial side of art. I've been working with Marvel Comics for a year and a half now, so I mainly focus on drawing comics that other people write. My focus is usually using comics as a medium to find a clever and interesting way to tell stories. But in my spare time, I usually work on indie publications, self-published comics here in Italy. So yeah, I guess my focus is on that.
So, Sofia, back to you then. We're talking about AI. So in your artwork, how do you use AI and what has it brought to your art and to you as an artist?
When I started using AI, this was in 2018, and the landscape of how AI was used artistically was very different to how it is today. So in a way that kind of defined the way that I work with this technology and the way that I view it. And I feel like for a lot of the artists, there weren't a lot of them around in that time, but for many of them, this became kind of like a way of engaging with these tools where one is forced to like train a model to understand like how it works, to kind of like become a little bit of a hacker. Even, if one isn't an engineer, one tries to like understand what is this tool doing and what can I do with it and how can I work with it. And that is how I see it. And I very much see it as a means to an end, but not as an end in itself. For me, AI is not the main thing that I do. Is just a tool. Is like paintbrush to a painter in a way. Like the paintbrush is not the objective of what is being done, but sometimes it does get referenced in the work. And I do talk about it and I do criticize it. And that is a big part of my practice too.
And does it help you to maybe be more efficient or, use it as a tool? You can maybe do certain things with it.
One of the things that drew me to working with AI is that I could extract patterns from data. So I could take a data set of images that I captured in one of my microscopes, and I could extract visual patterns from that. And that's something that I really wanted to do. Like as a digital artist, that was the novelty that drew me to it, this kind of pattern extraction engine side of it. For me, it's not about efficiency in my work. It wasn't about trying to achieve something faster. It was more about like, how do I use it to view my own like perception engine, how I view the world? How does this give me a new way of arranging an image that I wouldn't have been able to achieve otherwise?
And so about you then, Francesco, like I imagine that you have a bit of a different relationship with AI when it comes to your artistic process. So could you tell us a bit more about that?
Maybe we should clarify a thing, because I think that the way Sofia uses AI coming from the world of fine art, so where you, as she said, you study what the AI produces, the data sets, you're interested in that, maybe you train your own models, is different from AI used in the commercial art world, I guess. So where the important thing is to produce, is to maybe be efficient, is to cut costs, and where you're not interested in how the AI is producing something, the data sets, the biases. You are more interested in just having the AI produce something because you can use it. And that's where usually the issues we find with AI models arise. I don't use AI. I'd say I can't use AI, in fact. And there are three reasons. The first one is, an ethical reason. As an activist, I choose to boycott AI, commercial AI models, AI companies, because they've been using the work of my community of other creators and artists to train their models without paying them. They're basically taking away jobs. They're taking away possibility of making art for commercial artists, usually. So I can't use these models to produce something. I don't want to give these companies more power, more cloud, more visibility. I don't want to normalize that. So there is an ethical issue. There is an issue related more to my craft. As an artist, since I only draw, I don't like to write. I don't feel the need to tell stories necessarily. To me, it's the process, the way I draw, the way I find solutions is essential. makes my job fun to do. I do this job because it's fun for me. Using commercial models wouldn't be as much fun. It's not that interesting to me. There is a craft, there is a struggle to improve myself as an artist that lacks when you just generate an image, even if you have to rework it or change it or modify it. And I guess there is another important part. For example, Marvel Comics wouldn't love if I used AI, because in the comic book field in particular, but we've seen it all over the commercial art world, companies don't want you to use AI, at least for the final product. So for what comes out, we know companies have been using AI, generative AI, but mainly for the behind the scenes work. So early concepts, visualization, and that's a problem in itself because people again have been losing jobs. But companies don't want or can't publish final products where there is too much AI involvement.
Eleonora, thank you for being so patient. We finally get to you now. After hearing all this, what do you say are the risks and opportunities of using AI in art and everything in between? And so by that, I mean, we often think of AI as either good or bad, but perhaps the debate is actually a bit more nuanced than that.
When we think of risks and opportunities, it really comes to what both Sofia and Francesco were saying as the benefits and opportunities that AI and any technologically enhanced form of art. I see what Sofia was describing. And in this sense, I see AI models, AI tools being sort of like continuation to what has always happened. Artists have always used technology to explore the concept of authorship, shared collaborations today. And I believe it's a bit, if I'm not misrepresented, what Sofia is doing in her work, like experiencing concept of post-human authorship, shared creativity. The risks are exactly what I believe Francesco was describing. I don't think that the risk is that human creativity is in danger or that AI-generated art will replace completely any form of creativity. The risk to me is under which conditions artists will be able to make art and who will be allowed to have a creative job. And this is because of the extractive power of these tools. It's because of issues related to copyright. Not all artists are world famous ones that can support themselves only with their craft, but a lot of times musicians might write jingles for ads or write scripts for local news documentaries. So if these jobs are being automated, it means that artists lose these opportunities to get incomes and to support their creative work. And so that's a real issue. And it's important to discuss this because it reduces the opportunities, but it also reduces who is going to be able to be an artist. Do you need to be rich? Or like only the top famous artists can continue to have the space and the capacity to do this?
I guess that with all these pros and cons, it's quite complicated and debatable actually on whether we should ban AI or not. So what do you think could or should be done to allow artists like Sofia to continue creating AI-based art while also preserving the kind of work that Francesco does, Eleonora?
I believe it needs to be kind of a collective effort to protect artists, and the strategies or what you need to do, it changes depending on what is the situation, what is the tool that we're talking about. I think there is a technical side. For example, in the last few years, there has been computer scientists who have developed tools to help artists protecting their outputs. I'm thinking of a group of researchers from the University of Chicago who developed Glaze and Nightshade, which are tools to protect the data that artists produce, and they mask your style or they poison the data set that is being used for training. So that is the technical side. And there is the policy side of things. There need to be more legislation, better legislation to protect artists. A lot of time, this is impeded by fear that to regulate these sort of things is going to stifle innovation, that we're going to lose investments from tech companies. And then there is the cultural layer of how to protect artists. And this is, I think, has to do with researchers like me, with journalists, with public commentators, how we talk about AI in art. I think it's important in this to kind of be the reality check for the AI narratives. One important thing is, to me, reject anthropomorphizing AI. Whenever we talk about AI as an artist, AI as a creator, we are erasing the work that human artists do. Another important thing is to reject the AI hype. Francesco just said that like he cannot use AI. And this is because a lot of people, or the audience, a lot of time don't want the AI slop that been pushed onto them. And sometimes this narrative that AI is coming and is going to replace the work of creatives is kind of like feeds itself. I see a lot online on social media, people starting this sort of witch hunt and kind of like abusive sort of surveillance against the individual artist. So are you using AI or are you not? Are you the pure one or have you sold your soul? And as much as I understand the impulse, I think we need to keep the focus on the companies and not on the individual artist who is not like necessarily responsible or he cannot like take the burden of this.
Sofia, do you have anything to add to that?
I really agree with what Eleonora is saying regarding not anthropomorphizing too much the technology. It's a very easy trap to fall into. I think that when one actually uses the technology, understands how it works, we realize very quickly that it doesn't behave like a human being. For me, like the question of authorship is really important because when I do my work, it's my work. It's not the work of the algorithm. The algorithm that I'm training my data on are, like the public domain data that I work with as my material or scientific data, whatever that I work with is not the author of the work that I'm doing. There's that intentionality. It comes from me using it. And in the same way that when we look at painting from, I don't know, Monet, whatever, we don't think the paintbrush did it, But because these tools have become so automated, we have started questioning this notion of authorship more and more, just because the friction for creating something is smaller and smaller and smaller. But there can be a lot of friction in working with AI. And that is kind of like what I experience in my practice. It's extremely hard. Like there's so many things that I've been trying to do that took me years to figure out, like how to combine the latent space of, 3 different AI models and to blend them. There are very specific technical things that I've had to ask engineers for help to do. And so for me, it's kind of important to point out that there's a diversity of AIs as well, that AI isn't the one thing that has all the same shape. And also the responsibility aspect is really important too, because the responsibility cannot be offloaded to the AI. We can't say, oh, the AI did it and I'm not responsible for it. I have to make conscious decisions on how I design an algorithm and how I use the algorithm and what data I use to train the algorithm with. And all those things have to be conscious decisions. Even if I automate the process to the point that the AI is self-designing itself, that's it's self-selecting data sets. Let's say I design a fully automated system that does all those micro decisions for itself. Still, the responsibility is on me for designing that.
So based on what you've said then, as a more philosophical or existential question, how can we draw a line between what art is and what it is not? Francesco, I'm going to ask you, does it depend on the amount of AI used, do you think, or maybe on how it's used to create art or to help generate art?
There is a proper way to use AI in art. I can only admire and praise someone that takes authorship in their hands and uses AI in a creative way where there is an intent in the way you choose data, in the way you produce data for the training, in the way you write your own algorithm, the way you have to face the challenges that arise from developing an AI model. Generative art has been existing for a while, way before ChatGPT or Midjourney or Stable Diffusion. So using AI in itself has never been a problem. That's not the problem. The problem is the business model of a couple of companies. Okay, I feel you can start to draw a line using maybe the concept of agency. So again, if you're just typing a prompt on a commercial platform, receiving the output of the AI, which is maybe an image, and claiming that image as your own art, I think you're not making art at that point. So if you don't have control over what kind of data was used to train the model, you are not an author at that point. You're just a committant, a client asking someone to draw you something to make art for you.
Eleonora, do you have any views on that?
I partially agree with Francesco. I also think that there are ways in which even using the commercial models can stimulate an artist. I can see it as the same way in which material constraints have always been used by artists to kind of challenge themselves. It's not exactly the same thing, but when you think about the shape of the sonnet, you need to kind of make it work with the parameters and the constrictions that you are given. Of course, there isn't the commercial side of things. When Francesco was talking, I was thinking of this case. Maybe you remember, it was a couple of years ago. I think it was 2023. This German photographer, Boris Elkelsen, he won the Sony Photography Awards with an AI-generated image. He did it as a stunt. He won, and then he revealed that he did it with a generative AI tool, and so he didn't accept the prize. And he wanted people to discuss exactly what we are discussing. Is this creative? Is this art? And I remember reading an interview that I found really interesting, in which he said, it's true that the model generated the image, but I came to that point after 20 years or so of career. And he said, if I was given the same model when I was 18 years old, probably I would have generated an image of Superman. And so even in prompting, he was seeing like the skills and the crafts and the experience that he accumulated. So I think that even with the constraint of a commercial model, in some instances, which are not the majority of the cases, it's possible to create something. I say it can be called art, but I don't think we're going to solve it today, what is art and what it isn't. But it's pretty subjective. But to my understanding, I would see it as something like creative and artistic.
It's a philosophical question for the ages, indeed. Francesco, you're part of, well, you can help me with the pronunciation here. It's either EGAIR or EGER or EGR. You can correct me on that. And if I'm not mistaken, that's a European collective of artists who want to protect art and data from AI companies. So can you quickly just tell us a bit more about the collective and what exactly you're advocating for?
I think the pronunciation is, we settled on EGAIR or EGER. We never found a proper way to pronounce EGER. I guess EGER can work. What we do is we lobby the EU institutions so that we can protect our rights as artists, but also, I guess, the rights of European citizens in general, as one of our concerns is the privacy right that, well, again, as European citizens, that we feel is in danger when it comes to collecting data to train a big commercial. So what we do is just basically we go and talk with politicians and ask them to if we can find ways and solutions to protect us in a legislative way. We worked on the AI Act, for example. We've been working since, I guess, the end of 2022. We wrote a manifesto and we used that as our core principles when it comes to, again, asking institutions for regulations. I think we had some moderate success, at least in the AI Act, with other groups that advocate for artists' rights. We managed to sneak into the Act some rules that in theory protects us. And we are still working, again, to make sure that those rules that were written in the AI Act are enforced in the proper way, in a way that helps us and that protects us, actually. I guess we also talk with other activists worldwide. We talk with people like, for example, the team from the University of Chicago that developed Glaze and Nightshade that Eleonora mentioned earlier. So we do activist job. Our main focus is on politicians. So it's tough, but it's also been fun and kind of rewarding. Again, you are fighting against the biggest companies in the world right now. So it's not really easy when you just have the budget and the money that artists can gather. We feel it's a fight that we need to fight for.
Just as a final question for the three of you, how do you see the relationship between art and AI evolving in the future? But in 2 sentences max, let's say. Sofia, do you want to go first?
I think in the future, we will move away from AI being the center of things and it will return, the focus will return to art, the art that is being made, and it will be less about the novelty of the technology that is being used to make it.
Great. And Francesco, over to you.
I think the relationship is just going to be predatory as it is right now. So AI companies predating humans and artists' rights and art. If we have regulations, well, hopefully things can get more exciting and interesting for everybody.
Eleonora.
I would say potentially exciting if we get on with better regulation. And I think it was Sofia that was discussing this at the beginning when she was saying that AI in art is good when it supports experimentation, artistic inquiry, when it does not look for efficiency.
Well, that's all we have time for now. So thanks so much, everyone, for the very engaging discussion. Francesco Archidiacono, Sofia Crespo, and Eleonora Lima, thanks for joining us on Euronews Tech Talks. That's all for today's episode. If you're interested in discovering even more about AI, make sure you follow our digital channel Euronews Next and have a listen to the very first 3 episodes of Euronews Tech Talks. If you're here because of your creative spirit, then dive into one of our other digital channels, Euronews Culture. We'll be back in 2 weeks investigating the impact AI has on therapy. But before you go, if you have questions about European defence and space, then please share them with us. We'll put them to an expert in episode 64. You can find our contact email in the episode's description. Thanks for tuning in. I'm your host, James Thomas. This series was created by Marta Rodriguez Martinez. This episode was written and produced by Alice Carnevali. The theme music is by Leo Lebrun. Sound editing and sound mixing is by Joanne Breton. Our editor-in-chief is Niaz Samadizada. If you aren't already, you can listen to this series on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Castbox, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you're enjoying the podcast, please consider leaving us a positive review and, of course, sharing it. Thanks for listening.